We've seen the handiwork of the people taught in these mosques. We watched Daniel Pearl, the Wall Street Journal reporter, kidnapped, tormented and tortured on videotape, made to look into the camera and say over and over again, "I am a Jew, I am a Jew," before they decapitated him and sent the video of his severed head across the Middle East as a recruiting tool. Now that tells you something, doesn't it? When I assume they know their followers well. They think that decapitating an innocent, unarmed civilian will bring more followers to their cause. We've seen it in the news stories of Palestinian mothers informed that their son or daughter is dead, and their reaction is to dance in the streets. As long as they're told that their children, when they blew themselves up, killed Jews or Israelis or Americans, fill in the blank, whatever infidel you want to put in there. The natural instinct of a human mother anywhere in the world is to mourn the loss of their child. I have seen Palestinian mothers within 24 hours say, "This is the happiest day of my life, as happy as if my daughter was getting married." Because this evil jihadist, radical Islamic philosophy can even strip from the heart of a mother her natural desire to protect the lives of her children. Faced with this danger, we have a president who is AWOL. He keeps telling us that America has to prove to the Islamic world that we're tolerant. Mr. President, it's time for the Islamic world to prove to the rest of the world that they understand human rights and that they will tolerate religious freedom. Thank you. So I would say to Barack Obama or to Mayor Bloomberg in New York, next time you want to give a speech on tolerance, try giving it in Mecca. The problem with intolerance in the world is not in the heartland of America, it is in the heartland of the Islamic world. But of course, I set the bar too high. President's not going to tell the Saudis to stop funding hate. He's too busy bowing to the Saudi king. And then for good measure, he sticks his finger in the eye of the Israeli prime minister. He erupts with anger at news that Israelis are building homes in Jerusalem. And then he acts like a wet noodle at the news that Ahmadinejad is building nuclear weapons. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most anti-Israel president in the history of the United States. And I have to give him credit because it wasn't an easy title to win. He had to surpass the peanut farmer down in Georgia, Jimmy Carter. Now, the other day, the president repeated for the umpteenth time, you know, I never want to use the word lie, because in this town there's a lot of twisting of the truth, a lot of spinning, etc. You got to make sure before you want to really say that person's lying. But let me just say, when the president continually says, he said it in his Cairo speech, he has said it many times since, that Islam has played a major role in America from our very founding. It's just not the truth, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, come on. Okay. Look, there was virtually no Islamic presence in America until just a few decades ago. When the founders gathered at Constitution Hall, they did not gather there after having read the Quran. They gathered there after having read the Bible and the Torah, the Old and New Testament. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, if they had gathered there after reading the Quran, and if they had reached into the Quran for inspiration, this would not today be a country you would much want to live in. For one thing, all the women in the audience would be treated like cattle. You'd be in a separate room listening to this speech. Wearing a burqa, thank you very much. My best speech material comes from my audience. So the president owes us better than this. He's got a lot of power, but he doesn't have the power to rewrite history. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you remember after 9/11 what happened. I remember turning on the TV set and seeing in Muslim areas of the Middle East people dancing in the streets, handing out candy to their children, while we were still pulling our dead out of the wreckage. And then I remember turning the channel and seeing another scene in the Middle East of Israelis lowering their flag, declaring a day of mourning, weeping with us. We know who our friends are, even if the president is confused. A few weeks ago, the media and the full force of the White House focused on what I believe was a foolish pastor in Florida. I say foolish because his idea of burning a Quran is guaranteed to not gain followers in this battle for hearts and minds. Americans don't much like book burners, whatever book is being burned. I would have suggested to the pastor that if he wanted to make a point, he should have read from the Quran and asked if Muslims believe the verses that repeatedly call on them to kill the infidel. But to look at the media, you would have thought this pastor, whose church membership is smaller than Michelle Obama's personal staff, you would have thought this guy was speaking for all of Christendom. He was not. He was not. But ladies and gentlemen, if he had done that stupid thing, and there had been violence afterwards, his burning of that book would not have been the cause of the violence. It would have been the excuse for the violence. The cartoons weren't the cause of the violence. When the Pope has spoken, he wasn't the cause of the violence. We weren't burning Qurans on 9/10/2001. The cause of the violence is an Islamic culture that keeps hundreds of millions of people right on the edge of murder and mayhem 24 hours a day. And oh, how I long for a political leader in America that will be willing to reach out to those Muslims that want to make common cause with us on matters of a free society and human rights and human dignity for everyone, including women, the freedom of religion, etc., but at the same time will explain to the American people that we are at war with a group that is getting their inspiration from their religious teachings. That is a fact that cannot be denied. Well, my friends, let me close with 9/11 again. I know this is some heavy stuff. I always feel bad when I go give a speech that I'm sending people at best to the Pepto-Bismol bottle and perhaps even worse, so please don't do that. Look, I'm an optimist. I worked for Ronald Reagan for 8 years. He made us all be optimists. I believe there is, with all of the problems we see in this city, I believe in this country there is a great reservoir of decent Americans. They come in all shapes and sizes, all races and colors, all religious backgrounds. Some of them are well off, some of them are struggling, but they're Americans. We saw them on the morning of 9/11. We saw them in the policemen and firemen, Ground Zero. Unbelievable. We saw them in all those people that thought they might die themselves that day, and they made those incredible phone calls to their families to just tell them that they loved them. We saw it with those unbelievable Americans on that flight, that plane that went down in Pennsylvania. You know, if it was a plane load of special forces guys, Green Berets, well, it would have been a little bit more understandable that they fought back. There weren't any. They were you. They were you. They were students going to school. They were families going on vacation, businessmen taking that early morning trip. And all of a sudden, right there in the plane, they got drafted into a war that they didn't even know was being waged when they got up that morning. Pilot and co-pilot's throat cut, a couple of the flight attendants dead in the front of the plane. And from the cell phone calls that were made and the tapes that we have, we know that those passengers went to the back of the plane, and being good Americans, they started debating. Well, some of them said, we need to get back to our seats, man. We can't do anything about this. You don't fight hijackers. The plane will land, and then there'll be negotiations. We'll get out of here. Other people said, no, the country's under attack. We got to fight. And you know what they did? They couldn't. Nobody won the debate. So somebody said, okay, let's vote. That's what we're going to do, right? In 45 days, we're going to vote. If you get up that morning, you're tired, you're sick, it's raining. Remember these Americans on the plane. They voted. They voted to fight back. So they made weapons out of whatever they can. The leftover utensils from breakfast. The flight attendant was still alive. She boiled the water for the coffee. That was going to be her weapon. They took the drink cart, used it as a battering ram, ran down the aisle of that plane, throwing that water, fighting as hard as they could, into the teeth of men armed with box cutters. They brought that plane down. They spared this country more pain, more sorrow, more deaths. God bless them. Don't forget them. And when you vote this year, and when you vote in 2 years, and when this country gets put back on track, then and only then will the world look at America again and say to itself, there it is, the shining city upon a hill. God bless you. Thank you very much.